Welcome to the first meeting of the March Rotary Club of Des Moines. We're glad to be here at Wakanda Club with all of you, those of you here in person, those of you out there watching on our YouTube channel that's live streaming now, or watching later on our YouTube channel. Thanks to Invictus Media for filming our meeting today, as they've been doing all through this pandemic. I'm not wearing my mask while at the podium, so you can hear me more clearly, even though I'm getting a lot of emails asking me to leave it on. I'm also safely distanced from all of you, and we will be sanitizing the microphone between speakers. We do ask that you keep your mask on when not eating or drinking or speaking from one of the microphones. Randy Worth will now share just a moment of inspiration, followed by our Pledge of Allegiance and, of course, the four-way test.
Thank you, President Doug. I wanted to kind of remind you of a Sunday school story that you learned when you were growing up, and how that applies to us today. Our friend Bartimaeus. Bartimaeus was blind, lived in Jericho, and every day somebody would lead him outside the city. He'd sit alongside of the road, and the only thing that he could do was beg of the travelers traveling the road. And one day Christ came along, and Bartimaeus cried out to him, and Jesus asked, "What do you need?" And "What would you like?" And he said, "Well, I'd like my sight," and was granted that. And he jumps up, takes off his coat, and follows the procession that was following Christ on the way to Jerusalem. So I ask you, how do you think he felt? How do you think he felt knowing that it's a 15-mile walk from Jericho to Jerusalem? Probably the same. Probably felt pretty good. How do you think he felt when he learned it's a 3,300-foot climb from Jericho to Jerusalem? Because Jericho is 800 feet below sea level, the lowest point on God's green earth. And Jerusalem's 2,200 feet. You do the math. I think he still felt pretty good. How do you feel when somebody gives you help? When somebody unsolicited comes alongside, "How you doing?" And you're honest with them, and you say, "Well, yeah, okay, some things are good, some things are not." Or they just give you a word of encouragement, and you say, "Wow, where'd that come from?" But I made my day. I feel pretty good. How is it was a little tougher when we ask for the help? And that's a tough one, but when we do, we get an answer. Makes us feel all better. And the reason for both of those things, and told to you in my poor manner, is that nobody should be left sitting alongside of the road. It's Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And the four-way test. Is it the truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill and better friendships? Will it be beneficial to all concerned? Distantly meet and greet.
For those for those of you out there live streaming, I'm hesitating. We got a lot of talking going on here. Number of new people that haven't been here for quite a few months, so they're happy to talk back and forth. All right. Happy birthday wishes go out to Fred Locke, I hope Fred is watching on live stream while he is out partying like it's 1999. Thank you again, Randy, for signing up to do our moment of inspiration. Randy, was it difficult to sign up? And Randy says no. Was it difficult to do the inspiration? Randy says no, it was not difficult. This is a firsthand testimonial on how easy it is to sign up and do the inspiration. That's why I keep asking every week from the podium, we need more help to do this every week. So take it from Randy. If Randy can do it, I'm sure you guys can too. There's a sign up link in the email bulletin every Tuesday and a paper copy out in the lobby, or you can call the Rotary office. We are fortunate enough today to have a TV celebrity with us. I want to mention Elaine Estes was featured on Sunday evening KCCI 10 o'clock news. In case you missed it, the link was in the e-bulletin on Tuesday, or you can go to the KCCI TV website and view it there. And for those of you who don't know, Elaine was one of the first 10 original women that admitted to our club in 1987. We are proud to have Elaine as a member, and we're proud that you're here with us again today. And thank goodness the club decided to let women in, otherwise we wouldn't have great people and community leaders such as Elaine and a number of other women here in our group today and out there watching on live stream. Thank you. And now, I'm sure you're getting tired of hearing me speak, so Tim Lilwitz is going to come up and introduce our speaker today. And don't forget, if there's time for questions, you need to come over here to the microphone up front, state your name for the record, so our live stream guests know who you are, and we will be sanitizing the microphone between questions. So with that, Tim.
Good afternoon. Today we're lucky to have Todd Sommerfeld with us to present. Todd is the second generation owner and CEO of Kreg Tool Company, which is located in Huxley, Iowa. Actually currently moving to Ankeny, which I'm sure Todd will be addressing as part of his presentation today. Todd joined Kreg in 1999 after a brief stint in public accounting, and since that time, Kreg Tool Company has grown from 12 employees to over 240 employees under Todd's watch. Todd has been involved with all aspects of growing and scaling an entrepreneurial business, including the transition of both his father and himself from the role of CEO. Todd is a certified executive coach who has become as passionate about human growth and development as he is about product and business development with Kreg Tool. Now, in his second stint as company CEO, Todd is focused on creating a human-centered culture that intentionally invites the co-creation of Kreg's rapidly emerging future. Todd lives in Ankeny with his 3 children and his much better half, Amber, who was responsible, and well, I got to know Todd for getting kids to school and planning birthday parties, which, again, is how I came to know him. So help me in welcoming Todd Sommerfeld to our club.
Well, thank you, Tim. You're absolutely right about my better half. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here today. Like you said, I want to talk a little bit about culture. I didn't know what to name this. This is about culture. I've called this some other things. But I want to talk to you about culture. I got asked to speak. When Tim asked, he said, hey, you're putting that big new building out on the interstate. And like we intended with that is that should draw some attention. So I want to talk to you a little bit about that. So I'm not going to talk about the building, right, and what we're doing. I'm going to talk a lot about the products that we make. We make consumer woodworking tools. We sell to primarily do-it-yourself home hobbyists. We sell through Lowe's, Home Depot, Amazon. Those three make up over 50% of our sales. So we're a tool manufacturer, moving from Huxley to Ankeny. But as Tim mentioned, I'm actually in my second stint as a CEO. Right? And so I want to kind of talk to you about the journey of that, and really why I came back to this in a second is really about culture. And I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the journey that I went through to get here, and then how we apply that to organizational culture. So hopefully there's something in here that you can take away and use. This is my family, and I want to start with my family. So I'm a husband, a father, and a CEO. This is my wife, Amber. That's what she looks like, the better half. My daughter, Megan, there is, we're actually in college visits right now. She's a senior in high school. And then my two sons, Carson and the little one, Tristan, again, which is where Tim and I met. What I want to talk about is family leadership. What I've learned over the years is I grew up in the family business, learned a lot of business skills. Then I would take that leadership and I'd apply it to my home life, my family life. What I learned in my retirement is there's a lot more about family leadership and relations that I feel much more impactful to me in organizational leadership than the other way around. And so I'm just gonna kind of share that journey with you and go. But where it started for me in 2016, I had transitioned, like I said, the business from my father being the CEO to me in that spot. In 2012, I hired somebody to run the day-to-day of the company. By 2015, I had transitioned from CEO to chairman of the board. We sold 20% of the company that my parents owned to an ESOP, so we're employee-owned. And so I was working in different capacities of the business, but less involved. So probably 20 hours a week involved with Kreg Tool, looking at other areas to invest my time and energy. And one day I happened to meet a marriage coach. Met him at Panera here locally, and I thought, honestly, well, I don't know what this is going to be. Maybe I'll give him some money, something to that effect. I didn't expect a lot out of it. 5 hours later, I went home and I told Amber, I said, honey, I think we could use marriage coaching. And she started to cry. And I'm like, I think I'm onto something here. And so we were sitting in a session with those coaches one day in our living room. And at one point, Gary, the coach, asked me, he goes, Todd, turn to Amber. Amber, turn to Todd. Todd, look Amber in the eyes and tell her how you feel about what you were just talking about. And I couldn't do it. I was like, I at the time, I didn't think I knew, but what I later learned is I actually knew. I was just afraid to talk to her about it. And so that moment sparked something in me. Through a number of things, I ended up in an executive coaching program. And in that program, I had to write a paper early on about my character deficit. And what I learned is character is a counseling program in addition to a coaching program, so kind of human growth and development. We had to read this book called Hiding from Love by Dr. John Townsend, and there's 4 kind of development aspects of your character: attachment, separation, integration, how you integrate the good and bad in adulthood. Right, so I was going through this. I was in an integration, and there's like 10 things that you could be. None of these things were resonating with me until I hit this one. So this is what I was, or I'm still healing from, is an admiration addict. And so when I read this, it really resonated with me, and I was like, I better write my paper on that. So in admiration, here's the things that resonated. Though on the outside, the addict appears to be extremely confident in his talents and abilities, he is quite frightened he will actually be known to others. The admiration addict can never relax. He's always vigilant to look good and sound good to others. The contrast between the real self and the false self is immense. All right, that's connecting. But then this last part was really hit me and scared. This is what scared me when I was in a marriage coaching session. When the admiration addict begins to allow others to see and love the bad self, he loses the taste for admiration. That's how I got to cure myself of this. And that began a deeper journey of really understanding what's going on inside me. For me, it was a lot of shame, right? Brene Brown, this one? A little closer. Maybe I'll just do this because I like to walk around. Just can't do it. Thank you. How long you been doing that? Now I got to figure out where I was. Brene Brown. Okay, so Brene Brown has a lot of good talks on this, TED Talks, some videos on it, but she talks about the difference between guilt and shame. Guilt is I did something bad. Shame is I am something bad, and I had a lot of shame. So family business, a lot of it for me was going through, and I had issues with my dad and relationship. A lot of really good things that I've learned, and some struggles, and I was left with this shame that I'm just a bad son, I'm a bad husband, I'm a bad friend, father, whatever. And I could logically tell myself why that wasn't true, but I still felt it. And so it was a journey for me for kind of figuring that out. And what it did is it connected a logical, pragmatic thinker to these things called emotion. And this is just kind of a tree. I don't have time to go through all of it, but I like visuals. If you ever sit down and have coffee with me, I'm always drawing things. So this helps me see things. So this picture would be like the picture of a human, right? And how we develop and how we do what we do. The top leaves there kind of our performance, our behaviors, right? Think of the fruit that you produce comes from that. And as a leader, as a manager, always focused on the top side of that. But really, it's the roots of the human, it's up in our heads here, right? So what are we believing? There's truth, there's lies that we can believe. I'm not going to quote it here exactly, but it's reported that we have about 60,000 thoughts a day going through our heads, and about 80% of those are negative, right? And so there's a lot of lies that we listen to, and so things like I'm a bad son is a lie. When I'm a good son. It's amazing what you can do for people when you just say, hey, you're a good dad, you're a good son, you're a good whatever, because we're telling ourselves these things. So emotions are something that people think, well, we can't trust our emotions. It's actually the thoughts we can't trust. Our emotions tell us what's going on. And so so when it leads to organizations, there's a difference between managing, right? And we got to manage the behavior, we got to manage performance. But if we really want to change that, we can't necessarily control that. So really it's coaching and leadership is really about, I'd encourage you to think about asking what is the problem and seeking what is somebody actually believing that's leading to the behavior that they're getting. And so that's culturally what we're trying to do at Kreg is lead. We absolutely want to perform, create metrics, but our culture is really about what we're believing and how we live that out. Let's switch into organizational culture now. So this is something that we use to kind of talk about how this applies to organizations. So this is somebody that I've really resonated with over the past. Les McEwen has owned something like 30 businesses. In his time, he wrote a book called Predictable Success. And so this looks at the life cycle of a business, from the early startup to the life cycle of a business. And at a high level, 2 areas you want to be in here. 2 areas are good. The rest you don't want to be there. You want to be in either the fun stage or predictable success up in the top. And so for Kreg Tool, early success for us, we started 32 years ago. My dad made a product for the home we grew up in. My uncle used it in kitchen cabinets. Really encouraged my dad to go out and sell it. Went to trade shows. People loved it. Called it the Kreg Jig after my dad's name was Kreg. Spelled it differently, but had a lot of success at trade shows. Sold out at a lot of trade shows. Had big crowds who would come and show people a product. Early struggle, just getting it off. It was in the backyard. I mean, the house I grew up in, the basement was our office. I would walk out of my bedroom, and the office would be there. The backyard was the shop. The garage was the warehouse. And so I was really excited when we moved 3 years from then. We moved to Huxley and got the house back. But fun stage for us is a lot of growth, right? So we sold woodworking trade shows. We sold then to a lot of woodworking specialty dealers. Woodsmith is an example of that in town over on Hickman, if you've ever been to that store. Until about 2003 or 4 where Lowe's called us. We'd sold to Menards, but then Lowe's called us because people were going in the store asking for the product. So we didn't call Lowe's, they called us. It took us a while to get in there, but it's fun, man. When people are calling you, things are growing, good times. And then you got to add more people and build more things, and it gets more and more and more complex. And that gets into that whitewater stage that Les is talking about here. And you got to put systems and processes in place to control or manage the scalability of that growth. So we did that. We were working through that. We use this model to help people through. You go from a little startup, a little entrepreneur feel. When you start putting process in, we attracted a lot of people from larger organizations that were leaving process. And so now we're putting process in. We use this to talk about where we're going and where we're not going, right? And so from a standpoint of getting through whitewater is why we're putting process and scalable systems in place. Treadmill is an area we want to avoid, right? And so Les talks about that being a key feature of that attribute of that treadmill phase of a life cycle is where organizations start avoiding meaningful risk or vulnerability, which is where I bring it back to just understanding vulnerability. And then how do you overcome that in an organization? And so here's how we've tried to do that in the past. So we're on this phase. We're up in that, call it predictable success. I've always tried to introduce the future. I'm a visionary leader. I like to it's easy and natural for me to communicate where we're going, why we want to go there. Over the years, I got a little trapped in this, though, because going back to that admiration addict, it's where are we going? And then people want to know, and more people want to, how do I connect to that plan? You got to, it's part vision and strategy and execution, and so you wrap all that together. And I got to the point where I felt this unhealthy need to know the future. And really it's, so setting a long-term future and telling and communicating people where we are. Through this, I learned that here's the truth, is when I started doing this and growing, before anybody really asked or cared, it's like, here's where we're going. And then I literally felt like we kind of made it up as we went. I don't know exactly how we're going to get there. We'll figure it out. But then I felt like I can't tell people that. I can't tell them the truth, because then they expect me to have an answer, or at least I think they expect me to have an answer. So of what and the when and the how. And what I realized is we're kind of robbing humans in the organization of the human element of co-creating. And so I came across this book. I'm not going to go into detail, but there's a process. It's not just making it up as you go, but this is a book called Theory U. It's a real thick book written by an MIT professor. But it kind of talks about, and it really resonated, this is really the process that we go through on just making it up. And so it looks like this back to the model. So we're executing. We still gotta have a future vision, right? So we put out there, we call it a BHAG, a big, hairy, audacious goal. That's directionally where we want to go. Exactly how we get there is something that we have to engage the entire team on. And so that Theory U looks more like this in the life cycle of a company. So at some point in the organization, you got to introduce some vulnerability, introduce some change. You got to explore new things, and it's messy, right? It's not clean. People want to know the plan. They want to execute the plan. When you don't know exactly where you're going, it creates some tension to very predictable systems that we want. Without that tension, though, that we don't have vulnerability, we don't have growth, and then we start doing things the way we've always done them, and then there's a predictable pattern to that. We want to avoid that. So this is the model that we use. We explore, and then we at the bottom of that is a test. It's an experiment that we then experiment on. The idea here is you learn, you expand on what that learning is, and the big thing is letting go. right? So what's not working and what needs to change, you got to let go. And really learning how to grieve the change, grieve the loss is a big part of the journey that I've had to learn over the years is to go to where we want to go, we got to leave some of it behind. We can't take everything with us. And so it's a very emotional human thing. Just had a conversation yesterday with my VP of HR. We've had changes in personnel. And the reality of it is those changes in personnel, we can agree that they need to happen, but when people leave us, it's sad. And if we don't grieve those losses and the change, then we get a little messed up in the head. So this is what we're trying to do. What this has looked like for Kreg and the organization is many large organizations do this. They create an innovation lab. This is tension. It's messy, right? So you're going to put it over here in a lab, so you can draw a nice little clean circle around a lab. And we tried something a little bit like that. We modeled that. We called it the Kreg Experience Innovation Lab. The challenge with that is the innovation needs to happen within the larger business. If we just try to do it in a bubble, then we don't learn and it doesn't invite everybody into it. And so for us, it looks more like projects that people that are both executing can also get involved with a project. We got one started as a minimum viable product for us on learning. So we want to get people into building with tools a business model around paid learning. And so we're exploring that with a project. But the idea here is allowing a culture that says, it's okay to say, I don't know, we don't know. And in fact, there's many times where that's absolutely appropriate, and we want to see that. But when we do that, that's an invitation then for others in the organization to co-create that future that exists. And so we are using a model, trying to create culture to invite people in. Long-term goal. Another way to look at this 2x2 chart. This comes from a book by Andy Crouch called Strong and Weak. It just talks about authority, credibility, the management, and the vulnerability. And really, with both of those, you get a flourishing culture. With the lack of either one, too much authority, you're exploiting. Too much vulnerability, not authority, you're suffering. I think this like 2x2 and this concept is a lot of what not only organizations need, but what we need from in a culture today, right? To have conversations, being vulnerable to say, I don't know everything about that topic. But that's what we're trying to do in the business. The reason we're out on the interstate there is it's about culture. It's about the culture of Kreg that we're trying to lead. But we want to be, we believe that organizations need to influence the culture of the cities and the communities that they're in, and be leaders and thought leaders in driving conversations that I think we would all agree the world needs today. So going back to the model of the tree, the culture to me is the foundation, is the soil that we create in our organizations that either allows us to grow positive thoughts or negative thoughts. And I think it's absolutely the role of heads of organizations, of leadership in general, to not just drive results, to not just drive the business, but to really be focused on the culture and the soil that our organizations create. And I would just encourage you that to build culture, to build soil, you can't create a culture, I don't believe, around you that's not inside of you. And so that's why one of the reasons I share my kind of personal journey. I did that really quick today. But that gives us time for questions. So with that, what questions do you have? You can come to the microphone and ask them. If you want to check out, I don't have any photos of kind of the products and all that, but kregtool.com, krgtool.com, you can check that out and get a flavor for who we are too.
I'm Kurt Johnson. I've seen your commercials, and the jig, right? How has it worked as far as developing new products? I mean, either the old process or the new processes that you're trying to work with.
Yeah, thank you for the question, Kurt. Our process of product development is something that is a function of culture as well. So over the years, my dad's been involved with product development. I've been heavily involved with product development, led committees. In early years, it wasn't a department of product managers and product engineers that we have now, but it was just other functions that we would get together and build products as a committee. And we just launched new pocket hole jigs. So pocket hole joinery is still about 70% of our sales. When you took it, the jigs, the screws, the clamps, the ancillary products for that. We just launched the first pocket hole jig that didn't have a Sommerfeld involved with it. And so the process, we've spent a lot of time developing teams and processes around product development. A lot of what we focus on isn't so much, especially with this go-around, and I think this go-around is going to be very successful. We're very focused on the customer data, what the customer's saying, how they view it, how they're using it. We've been building pocket hole jigs for 32 years. And so we've completely rethought how these new ones work by connecting to the customer. Recent product experts in the field said these jigs now do what a pocket hole jig always should have done. And so I think it's a testament to our team, to the process that we put in place to really not say what do we want, what's important to us, but what's important to the customers that we're serving. So it's been an evolution, one that we're still working through. Our future will be in new product growth, organic product growth. We've got an engineering team on that, about 15 engineers that develop products. But we're also looking more at product line extensions, maybe companies that we can acquire to continue our growth into the future.
My name's Chris Anderson. I'm a woodworking addict. So thank you very much for being here. You talked about admiration addict. I grew up knowing it was imposter syndrome. So there's not many times I can say to a CEO, "You're my people." So thank you. But if Renee was here, I think she'd also say thank you for being vulnerable, which means a lot. But when we talk about foreign issues of people coming over and stealing our intellectual property, how do you fend that off when you've got Porter Cable, you have other ones that are trying to use what you've already created? How do you fend off the wolves?
Well, you keep innovating, for one, and I think I think that we're seeing more and more of that of products, and one of the things that we're doing with these new products and kind of a model is we used to think our making them here was a differentiating factor. We're actually moving away from our own manufacturing and really focused on investing in how do we keep innovating. So our last product that we just replaced was 12 years old. And I think that's a long product life cycle. So we got to accelerate that and just keep ahead of it and keep focused on the customer. We've got strong relations with Lowe's and Home Depot, so they get a lot of products pitched at them. Our brand has strength because it's connected to the customer. So there's intellectual property. We've got new intellectual property all the time, but if we just focus on intellectual property, I don't think that's gonna keep us ahead of the competition. So it's there's no one single way that we do that. There's a lot of ways we keep ahead, but it's continuing to change. And one thing that I think it's important to me that we build a culture that is adaptive to change, because that's one thing that's happening at an ever increasing rate. And if we don't have a co-created culture that can self-correct, then we're going to be in trouble. So,
Sean Mullen, I want to piggyback on Chris's comment about being vulnerable today. I thought that was very impressive, so thank you for sharing. That's a good sign of leadership in my book. I have a question about your BHAG. And looking 15, 20 years down the road, are you concerned at all of the lack of emphasis on vocational training in K-12 that could affect future woodwork?
Appreciate that question. Very much so. So what we see in what we do, and I appreciate this book on tools. So when people use tools, our purpose is to activate people to experience the benefits of connecting head, heart, and hand. And so from an education standpoint, whether you're going into the trades of woodworking or you're just using it to develop problem solving skills and life skills, huge benefits that in many cases certain kids are they're going to learn a lot better from that type of education than sitting in a lecture hall. And so both it resonates with our brand and our business model, but it also resonates with the kind of the charitable giving side of what we're doing from a Kreg Care standpoint. We're heavily focused on education in the trades or that activates learning. So Central Campus is one of our partners that gets people out of the classroom and into lab-based hands learning. This paid learning thing that we're doing now is it's really about right now. It's how do we tap in and activate through learning our consumers, but long term, how could this be a homeschool shop class? Because we're really tapped into that need. Believe that we need reformation in the school system, and this is one of the ways that we need to be advocates of, because our kids need this. So yeah, thank you for that question.
From Huxley.
Yes.
I was first introduced to how much Kreg as a company cares about people when our son had a brain tumor, and we were given some money by your company during that time. And then also I've seen you at different events. I know that you have a chaplaincy, or you have a chaplain in your company. Could you talk a little more about Kreg Cares and what you do through that?
Sure. Kreg Cares is we give a portion of our profit to benefiting culture, right? So it's just a corporate responsibility. Started in 2009 with we just had a fixed amount. We're just going to start giving that amount. It has grown into one of the biggest passions that we've got a section of that's employee run. So there's a lot of areas that are in need, as we all know. So our employees get involved with that. What we try to do with that is use our resources to get people involved, right? And so we'll give to areas where our employees are volunteering time and energy. Boy Scouts, Make-A-Wish, these types of things are some of the key areas. So we do that. I think it has grown into a big portion of that being the education. So biggest portion of our budget is in this education. And I feel like there's a lot of areas that we can give. Where are we connected with influence? Which for us it's what are we seeing in the business that we have. And I've grown to believe that organizations have influence beyond that in a certain area of culture. And for us, I really feel like it's education, so we're focused on that. You mentioned the chaplaincy. We no longer have chaplains. We have chaplains because we feel like people need cared for. My Christian faith is important to me. I think chaplains are valuable. We went away from chaplains because I hired the chaplains to create relationships and not lead with have you accepted Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior? And so it became more about that than the relational aspect that leads to that. So it's a big part of culture and a big part of what we do. But I believe we've got to earn that and not just preach that. So it's a little bit about that. We are one more question, or we? You got it?
Oh, apparently we're done.
One more question. I got a clock here. I'm trying to be.
Oh, okay. Todd, my name is Skeet Wooten, and like Chris, I'm a woodworker as well. A lot of my money is with you, so I'd like to know how it's doing. But what is a product that Kreg created that you thought was going to be a home run that the market just said no? And oh, by the way, the workbench, great stuff.
Yeah. Well, that's a good question. Maybe you can answer that for me. I don't know. I can't. One of the things we're trying to do with our product management team is get a few more of those. I think we're overly cautious that all products are big home runs, and we've certainly had some that have done better than others, and that's. I can't think of one that's. I would actually like to be disappointed in one, but they've all done fairly well. I think one product that we did that was more about our internal process than the external market. We did a beaded face frame jig, and so it's a product that I'm just dying to discontinue. My dad really wanted to do this. He developed a product to do beaded face frames, and it's a specialized form. Goes on a router table. It works well. It just doesn't connect to the customer. It connects more towards our internal desires. So that's maybe one that didn't go so well. And are you familiar with that one? See? Okay. See, you're not familiar with it, so I picked one. All right. I think we're good. Thank you. It's good, man. Great being with you. Appreciate your questions.
Thank you, Todd, for being here with us today and giving us your informative presentation. Certainly a little bit more than just woodworking jigs. Appreciate that. Never know what we're going to get with our speakers, and did a very nice job today. So since you did a nice job, we're going to donate the book Tool School to the Downtown School Library in your honor. Very appropriate selection there. Is that just random, Kitty, or did you? Kitty says it was just random. I don't believe her. But Todd has inscribed some words of encouragement to our young readers there. Thank you for all being with us here today, whether in person or out there in cyberspace or later on YouTube, all at a later time and all together. Upcoming speakers. March 11th, next week, John Hawkins, Boys to Men Youth Programs. March 18th, Gary Scrutchfield, Skilled Trades Alliance, speaking about hands-on, work-based educational programs for Des Moines area students. And March 25th, I hope I'm going to pronounce his last name correctly, David Muth, Alternative Equity Advisors on monetizing sustainable agriculture. Thank you all for being with us here today and being part of your Rotary Club of Des Moines. Thanks again to those of you tuning in now or later to watch our meeting. And as always, don't forget to leave something behind this week, just as Elaine Estes has been doing for her entire life. We are adjourned.